Hey, good afternoon and welcome, and thanks for joining us. It's almost Christmas, and I think I got one of the best gifts thus far to be able to sit and enjoy not only the wonderful company but the counsel of Mr. Loxler Banks, a fellow who, through his service to country during the wartime effort, to his dedication to the music industry, to just being a stalwart within the community, Mr. Loxley. I would almost say to you, you've extended a lifeline. Thanks for sitting and joining with me this afternoon.
Oh, I'm glad to be here. I believe it was planned to have a musical thing about Caymanian music.
Yes, sir. And the beautiful thing is that music, even though I still consider myself very youthful, and so does my father, and so do you, so that's good. For me, before Radio Cayman came online, we would listen, like many, to the radio. And for some reason, a Friday night seemed to have been the night where I could get the radio. Now, was that because it was a Friday and there was no school the next day? Is it because Fridays, the waves seemed to have been better in 20 years?
No, it was because they were saving the battery power for Friday and Saturday night.
That's what it was. And in particular parts of the house seemed to have made it easier to pick up the radio as opposed to other parts.
Well, back in those days that you're speaking about now, it was all AM and short wave, of course. Mm-hmm. And with the AM stations, you had to have an antenna, and usually the antenna would be on the roof. I mean, I can recall we had a little radio, mm-hmm. and we had to have an antenna on the roof, and I strung an antenna from one peak of the roof to the other one, and you had to make sure that you had a good ground to the antenna. Now, usually you'd try to drive a steel rod down into the mm-hmm. ground, but out there where we lived, I could drive it down 5 feet and not hit rock because it was on the beach.
Not my sign.
Yeah. So what I had to do, I had to take a bucket and bring salt water. Just go down to the iron shore and dip up a bucket of salt water and come up with maybe 5 or 6 buckets and pour around the ground to give it, because salt water is a good sort of conductor.
Yeah.
So I'd get a little improvement.
My father bought me a Philips radio, and I still remember that.
Well, before Philips, I guess they both intertwined with each other. But there was the Zenith Oceanic.
Okay, no, I didn't have it.
Yeah, that thing weighed about 45 pounds.
No, Philips and Philco, the same? Or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
No. Philips. Well, they could have had some connection. Philips, I think, was a Dutch company, mm-hmm. but Philco, if I remember right, was a Ford. It had some connection with either Ford or GM.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So
I can still see this radio, man. I kind of wish I had taken better care of it.
Yeah, and prior to the Zenith, it was the Helicrafter. Helicrafter was a Cadillac of radios back then. Helicrafter and Zenith.
Yeah. Mine was a Philips one. One of his strips.
Well, that was after what was it? Capital Traders started bringing. I think that was one of the brands that they brought in.
I think he brought it back on a trip coming out through Europe, and just as I think about it, and maybe I've fantasized and sort of romanticized the whole thing, but traveling then wasn't like it was a few years ago. Probably not as bad as it is now. But bringing back things were difficult, so he brought this back with him, right? And it was interesting. It provided that avenue where, I had this affinity for radio, listening, playing the radio. That's probably the best instrument I can play, the radio.
It's always easy.
But it connected. Uncle Lester would listen to BBC 3-4 o'clock in the morning, all up until sunrise, and that was how he understood what was happening around the world, and he could add commentary. And long before you would hear it elsewhere, it was breaking on the BBC, and that was the authority back then. I guess they were credible one time as well, you know.
Well, they still
Yeah.
hold quite a bit of credibility.
Okay. Listen, you gotta have a little bit of fun at some point, right? But why I say that is that you talk about AM, and now we have, for some, you know, seemingly better technology, but just to be able to have that level of access. But can you imagine being at sea and having little limited contact with what's happening at home for, you know, months on end? And for some people, they've been absent for, you know, years. It's
Yeah, well, you know, most of those old salties, they had a good radio, be it helicopter, be it Zenith, or during the war. Well, usually they could, because most of the ships during the war, and those fellas that sailed during the war, they had some good communications on them, and you know, you could usually go in there and they'd let you tune into whatever you want to tune into.
Huh. But then the radio and music almost, you know, went hand in hand.
Yeah, that was really what caused I guess you could say I don't want to call it an explosion, but the great widening of music when they began to play music on the radio.
Yeah.
You know, when I guess it was Edison came up with his first, actually it was a disc, and then actually a cylinder, and then they finally figured out, well, this cylinder thing is not too efficient, and Edison and a German by the name of Berliner, I think, Berliner, Berliner actually came up with the disc. The idea of the disc, as we still use today, you know, the
DVDs and CDs.
Yeah.
Wow.
And Edison, I think, adopted to the disc.
You know, sometimes I think back to the events in history, even just after World War One, and wondering if there was more collaboration as opposed to, you know, what transpired. How much more advanced, you know, we would have been, how much better our societies would be in terms of health, in terms of industry. I mean, look at the scientists, you know, who were making munitions and those sorts of rocketry for the Germans, and then, you know, when they went across the U.S. and divvied up through the Allies, what that could have meant, you know, for humanity had it been used for, you know, a better purpose.
Well, yeah, and it's basically all the same process. You know, it seems that humanity can't get over this command, or what people call it, biggishness. You know what? And that's kind of where I think every culture has a word, right? But if you think of that, and you look at today even, right, under the guise of science, so to speak, and space exploration and all other things, the same sort of thing is happening. You know, trillions of dollars, you know, over decades have been reallocated to this. Okay, there may be benefits, but people are homeless, people are going hungry, people are, you know, denied education and healthcare. What if some of that resource, or well, you know, going back to you know what you just said there, you think of what I think was Ralph Abernathy, his comment when he sat with I think it was Walter Cronkite watching the first exploration of the rocket that was going to take Armstrong to the moon. And he expressed, he said, you know, how can we consciously spend all these billions of dollars to try to put a man on the moon when we got people sitting, you know, 6 miles from where they were at Cape Canaveral, going hungry. Yeah. So. And think of that. I mean, that was, you know, more than half a century, well, 3/4 of a century almost now, right? And we have come very, very little in terms of looking at humanity and looking at our brothers. And this is why I believe Christmas, for some reason, resonates with so many of us. You know,
for those who celebrate because of the birth of Christ and that. But even others who don't, we stop for the most part and step back and stop chasing, the capitalist mentality, and maybe demonstrate a bit of humility, a bit of love.
I think though, if we're going to make any improvement, you gotta keep a little element of the capitalist process in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not opposed to that at all, right?
But you mentioned instances where we should be able to get together, or we have got together. There was an instance during World War I where the German side and I guess, and the Allies side, on several of the battlefields, they just laid their guns down and they got together and they celebrated Christmas and then went back to their guns.
And this is, I guess, for those of us who may know that from, sort of historical accounts. This is why I say that even at Christmas, there seems to be this thing about us as people across the globe to chill for a bit. It may be for a day, it may be for a week. We take a pause on our misbehavior, as it were, so that we can get into a little bit more of...
Well, you localize that a bit. You think of all of our seafarers away at Christmas, and they were in big cities with all of the amenities that had to offer, but where they wanted to be, Cayman, where you had to go to the well and dip up the water.
And that is it. And something that I more that I think about it, the more I realize how important it is. I've always said, for as long as I can remember, that for a span of time, sometime a day or two before Christmas Eve to the 2nd, 3rd, 4th of January, depending on where it fell, I understand the cost of business, but I also understand the importance of what it would mean for society. If we value that time and we went on a national go-slow, as it were, where that was about, fellowship and festivity, family, the food, and that level of celebration of being gracious and grateful, we would see a better people. Way back when I ran one of the companies, it was something that the employees understood. We did that at Christmas. They had the other vacation time. I could get more from them all year, any day of the week, any hour of the day, because they had that time at Christmas, whether they celebrated or not, whether they were here or they traveled elsewhere.
I think DJ is saying we got to take a break. But let me get this in. I think that was years ago in Cayman. That was the kind of...
That was the norm.
Yes.
That was the norm. Yeah. And I stand by that. I think that is important. And you don't lose as a businessman. You actually gain a whole lot.
The community gains and everybody around gains.
Yeah. And these campaigns for drinking and driving, as important as they are, I don't think you would have that issue because people would have more time to celebrate. There would be, still some of us who are not always as conscious and cognizant of, what we're doing, but you won't have that. People running from pillar to post to get from one spot to the next. You would have something to consider. When I become governor, I think I'll do that.
Okay, I'll get around.
Would you please? All right. Well, let's pause. And I'm honored that Mr. Lockton was sharing some time with us. He has, can I say it? I mean, let one of the cats out of the bag. He has dug into the vault. And we're going to retrieve some stuff. And we're going to share with you. Yeah, so stay tuned for Talk Today. Hey, good afternoon. Welcome back, and thanks for joining us. As we celebrate Christmas, always grateful to be reminded not just of our traditions, but reminded of the blessings that we have. And I'm honored that Mr. Loxley will sit with us, not just as the former director of broadcast, and not even the host of CI Retro, not even Yesterday Musical. But if I say almost next to the top, being a veteran of the Air Force in the U.S. and seeing the importance of what the freedoms and democracy and to you know what? Thank you, DJ Lee. I wonder what we're gonna get. You know what? We'll ask what he's getting brought to us, right? Maybe not. but it's important, I think, that we get this, and through music. We see there's a message in ministry and music. We see how music gets people sometimes to a particular space in their music. Music means a lot.
Well, music is considered the universal language of all of us. I mean, we can hear a song that Pavarotti is singing in Italian or whatever it may be, or Julio Iglesias in Spanish, and we can relate to the melody and that, and it just transcends us into.
And even if we don't speak the language, we somehow can learn the words and sing it, and then maybe through that we'll learn as well, right? But you're right, music, and if nothing more, the little beat, I mean, some of us have rhythm and some of us have rhythm.
And so melody.
And the melody, well, melody. I wouldn't go that far and I say I have to. But it's important, right? But that is that thing. I mean, you ever watch your parents and your father included, but your mother primarily, she's doing stuff and she's humming. It could be a little hymnal, one of her favorites from the hymnals. It could be anything, but she's humming, right? And this is 12 o'clock in the day. This is, late evening. It doesn't matter when, there's that little joy, and music does that for you.
Well, there was a little fable, is that what they call it, many years ago, that we were taught in school, and it went whistle and hoe, and you can relate this back now to where you had to walk long distances, maybe from Haida Bay to Henning Beach in West Bay, or and it went whistle and hoe, sing as you go, make the road shorter with the song,
Whistle. Sing as you go, make the road shorter.
Yeah. Well, it went whistle and hoe, sing as you go, make the road shorter with the song,
Yeah, and it did, It did. Yeah. I mean, can you imagine walking back from the Haida Bacchus, mosquitoes probably at your back, and you got a good friend in tow, and you're probably skipping. You got a couple of jacks with some touch rope.
We've come through that old track at what's now, I guess they call it Regional Parsons. But that was just a
couple of yampies.
Yeah, it was an 18-inch track that went from actually Mount Pleasant right up to there. You come through that with a basket of lobsters on your back, and you had to whistle or do something.
Your pants they roll up, barefoot. But and maybe even for me, I mean, I remember that. But I also remember being able to sometimes push a bicycle through as get further.
Yeah, well, it kind of kept expanding a little bit, especially I think. During probably Christmas time, somebody probably went through there with a machete on both sides and chopped down the...
made it a little bit safer, as it were. I remember stories of my dad would say coming out of there. One time, him and Uncle Lester, or if it was him, and a cow was somewhere across the thing, and they trip up over it.
No, they probably had too much baggage.
Is that what it was? I still believe it's the cow. All right, but this is what I'm hoping for, especially now, and we will make jokes, hopefully to help to cope. We will make jokes as a way to sort of, bring us to a better mental space. But 2020 was not the year that we planned, and next year, if we think about it, realize it's pronounced 2022. So is that going to be a repeat of 2020?
Well, yeah, and I think there's a great hope that we can tamper down what's been happening, and I think there is good potentiality with what you at least hear that's coming on the market that might be hopefully that we'll be able to temper it down a bit.
Right, and with that, there's the reality. We see where it is, and no one, at least not from our stock, will stick their heads in the sand and ignore what is there, or will give up. We're people of great resolve and resilience. We press on, but there can still be joy. And on behalf of the Honorable Minister for Health, if I could just quickly interject, there are many of us who are blood donors and who give. And here's the, if not the greatest gift, the gift of life. We could, become a blood donor, or if we already are, make sure that we take extra good care of ourselves so that we are available. Check in with the blood bank. Don't wait for them to check with us, and make those donations. Just like food and building materials and the like that are almost 100% imported to our shores. So is blood if necessary, and that supply could be here on a much better, more readily available, accessible, space, as opposed to having to worry about going through that very costly and sometimes almost impossible, importation process, especially now. So there's so much we can do to give life and to live life.
There's a whole myriad of things that we all could do, I think, to make life maybe a little better for us and for our fellow citizens.
Well, we have Mr. Loxley Banks in the studio. The phone lines are open, and sometimes if you want to wonder why you're knowledgeable and you have wisdom, well, if you sit in the council of your elders and you're willing to listen to what they impart, you become that much more, positioned to be a better citizen. So I appreciate you sitting with us.
Well, that was really a norm when I was growing up.
Yeah.
Some of them, didn't want little people listening to the big people story, but they'd accommodate you, and let you sit on the outside and listen. And
once you were attentive, not disruptive.
And there was a lot of gems that you'd pick up that would stick with you.
Yeah, my brother Dwight, I think, is certainly was, but is even more, tuned to that. And I hear him regale some of the stories, and I thought, how do you remember? But because he listened, he was right there, and it was something that you did. I guess we are a society with a strong oral history, and it's been sort of lost if we don't pass it along. That's why when you go into the vault, I like that, man.
I recall an instance one time, and this was in the evening, and right would be in front of where the four-way stop is in West Bay, pop right out the middle of that intersection. There was a group of men standing up talking, and anyway, there was us children. We were around playing, doing whatever. But something that I heard attracted me, and I snuck my way right in the middle of this circle. And Mr. Buddy Ebanks, I remember him saying to me, "Now, Loxley, this is the big people talk." He said, "Just go out there and listen." Yeah. But I got right in the middle of them.
Yeah. And that's the thing, you wanted to be as close as you could, right? And I think, in that sense, you were included, but then sometimes, and I think that's what I did, but my brother Dwight, I think, tended to want to stay more in the periphery. Sufficiently close enough that you're part of it, but not in the midst of it that you are obviously, have to be cognizant. Because sometimes, those gems had colorful descriptive.
Oh, yeah.
Part of language development, I guess. All right, so I really, publicly acknowledge you and appreciate you stepping in. We had, reached out to some of the music and the entertainers within our sector, and understandably, they have many commitments. Sometimes just scheduling things become challenging, and again, part of the reason why I said to employer and employee alike, this is a very hectic time of year for many of us. Just trying to find that one gift that means something. Sometimes for different reasons. Just trying to get, take back to the day when we were back in San and making sure the house was painted. Whether it needed a painting or not, it was painted because that's what we did. Right? Maybe that's why the houses were preserved so well. 15 layers of paint.
Yeah, well, and that paint back in those days, it was it was
Good
paint.
stuff. Good stuff, huh? I think you could probably make a parachute of that, actually. But you've dipped into the, your time and so generously and graciously helping us to understand what Christmas is like here and for us, but across the globe. And I don't know. I still think back to, when your fathers or our fathers were absent, and when they were to come home and couldn't make the ship, and they may have come home, maybe just in time for New Year's, but they were en route from Christmas, or they didn't come home at all. So we got a quick break, but when we come back, maybe we can share for some more good things, and invite you to call if you wish. Stay tuned. Hey, good afternoon. Welcome back, and thanks for joining us. And the phone lines are open if you have a minute. You want to call and share a thought of, treasured Christmas memory. We have the excellent company of Mr. Loxler Banks, and Mr. Loxler, I just want to, one of our listeners shared earlier when we were talking. He said, he had a Philips 8-track tape player that his father had got for him. It was a red one, he said.
Yeah.
And a WQ AM was the radio station that they listened to.
Yeah, well, WQA. Well, they were from the Miami area. I don't recall really being able to hear much from Tampa, but from the Miami area, of course, Miami is a lot closer than Tampa to hear. There was WQAM, which is still one of the major radio stations in the Miami area, what we call the market area, and that area is a big market area. WQAM, WGBS, which was heavily listened to here, and of course WMIE, which was the Cracker Jim station, and also WINZ. And there was a DJ on there. Let me see if I can recall his name. Can't recall his name, but people knew these folks by their first name.
And what was interesting, it seemed like, maybe again, hopefully I'm not recalling it correctly, but it seemed like very much similar to how we had our own, requests on Radio Cayman Radio.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
And we knew people, right? You would say it was a small community, but from my recollection, or at least what I have come to discern, is that here are radio stations, primarily in the U.S., and they on their talent there, the DJs, knew the people here, and had some sort of semblance, some sort of connection. And even when you would stop in, there's Johnny Banks. He just popped in. He's catching the next flight home.
Yeah.
They knew.
Oh yes,
they knew the people.
Yeah. And we're kind of roaming around in the musical sphere here, but I guess it's probably one of Cayman's most popular songs. The Barefoot thing, Santa Got a Sunburn.
Yeah.
And where that really broke in to what you could call a major market area was on WGBS in Miami.
And I think that the connection that we had to places, or places had to us, how that has parlayed, and it's still very much seen now. I don't know that we make that a connection as much. Maybe we look too much at how to, what's today's language, monetize things.
Mm-hmm.
But that value then wasn't about the money. It was about, the real connections.
Mm-hmm.
I would even say the economics of things.
Oh yes.
The societal value. It translated into dollars for some, but it's more about cents. This listener says, father had a reel-to-reel recorder, a reel-to-reel player. You remember reel-to-reels?
Oh yeah.
I was speaking to someone recently.
In fact, there was a gentleman from West Bay. He lived in Port Arthur, and he never traveled without his tape recorder when he was coming home. And he was very he was very religious. He really worked his faith, and he recorded quite a number of the services and the things that was going on at the Pilgrim Holiness Church back in those days. And I've been trying to see if I can trace him down. I mean, I know he took him back to Port Arthur with him, and but it would be fabulous to listen to some of those programs now.
All right. Well, we have Mr. Loxley here, and I think the great wealth of wisdom and knowledge. Mr. Loxley, we have a call online as well. Hey, good afternoon. Welcome. Thanks for calling.
Hello. How are both of you?
Blessed. And yourself? Merry Christmas to you.
Merry Christmas to both of you. Lockie, you remember it was a station in Nashville, Tennessee that Grandma Maggie used to listen to it, and Mr. Hugh J had his radio, and the neighbors used to turn that up loud.
Yeah, well, that was probably WSM, and WSM is still one of the big stations in Nashville. And look, I didn't wind this in when I was talking about the radio station, but many years ago there were stations that was designated as clear channel stations.
Okay.
And WSM was one of those clear channel stations. WCKY Cincinnati, and I think even one of the Louisiana stations was designated a clear channel station, AM, which meant that you could not get a frequency close to that frequency, and nobody else could get a frequency close. So it means that here I'm talking today about bandwidth and all this, that station had a wide bandwidth that it could send its signal out. And that was WSM,
Oh, Okay, and remember, they're talking about a request. They used to listen every Monday evening, and I remember the Bon Air.
Yeah, Bon Air. Well, that was later on. I think
It was later?
in the early 50s or mid 50s. I think. Before that, it was WMIE Miami with Cracker Jim.
Yeah, Cracker Jim. I hear Grandma talking about that, and you remember, they used to have, Mr. Reynolds had what you used to call it, the graphanola.
yeah.
And you remember the joke about that, right?
Yeah.
Somebody from Northwest Point came up and heard.
Well, we better not.
Yeah, heard that playing and say, "Boy, Mr. Reynolds got something out there. You think that Binghams can sing?"
Yeah.
You throw it. When you put on the record, you throw it on like you're throwing on a pop kibble.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, there was a few of those phonographs around. In fact, people used to bike them around. I had a cousin who, and this, they were really expensive graphanolas. That's what they call them, but they were phonograph.
Yeah, we had one. Uncle Shelby had bought it from Grandma Maggie.
Yeah.
And the records. I remember what I used to call. I call it the records. It was round like a glass, right? And when they sometimes if you drop them, they would break, and something used to come out of it, looked like chalk.
Yeah. Well, maybe that was a cylinder type thing, because before the disc, what they call the records, it was a cylinder. It was something. It's probably in shape of a glass. Drinking glass, maybe 10 inches long.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about, drinking glass.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm,
All right. Thank you very much, and Merry Christmas again. All right.
Merry Christmas.
All right. Well, it's all like the plastic glass.
Yeah. Well, it was wax, really. It was I guess a solid core with a wax outer lining that you could embed electrical energy and electrical impulses on that first gave you the advent of recording.
Wow. We've come a long ways, huh?
Yeah.
Well, Ms. Loxley, we've got a news, and then we come back. I know you got some other great things in store for us. And as you're listening, who knows? You might not only laugh and learn, but you'll find out how much it is to live. So stay tuned. Hey, good afternoon. Welcome back, and thanks for joining us. And we're hoping and praying that you're enjoying what is a blessed time in this country and a blessed time of year. And if this is your first Christmas in Cayman, or this is a Christmas, for the first time that you're here because you've been away for whatever reason, or if this is where you've always celebrated Christmas, whether you're ancestral or whether it's just habitual, this is your traditional place to be, well, I trust it's going to be a very safe, healthy, a blessed Christmas. I know some have found it opportune to travel and leave maybe their heartstrings here as they travel and reacquaint with family and friends across the seas. But it's always good. And wherever you sort of lay your head and make your bed come Christmas Day, well, let it be that it's an enjoyable, festive family time. Honored to have Mr. Loxton Banks with us. And as we invite you to call and share your thoughts with us, of Christmas memories, of your favorite sort of wishes that you could get or give, well, 949-8037, 1-800-534-8255. As we go through today's discussion, I'm mindful, Mr. Loxton, of the importance of what Christmas is. I would say for many of us, but certainly for myself. And it isn't, when I say this, that we don't appreciate nor value the importance of a strong work ethic or the need to keep the engine and the economy running. But it's probably because of that. Like any good engine, you need to take it down and maintain it. Like anything, you need to value and appreciate it by giving it an offline. 6 days shall I labor, the 7th day I rest.
That's the golden rule.
Yeah, and within the Cayman context, that time in Christmas, to be able to do just that, to draw alongside family and friends, to be reacquainted with people that you probably haven't seen for a while. But even those of us who may not necessarily get along with others, we make a concerted effort to be civil, to be cordial, to sometimes,
Well, there was a lot of travel between the districts during those times.
Yeah.
East End, I recall going up to East End when Christmas with my dad and Mr. Prentice, and I believe Jimmy Powell. Yeah, I'm sure he was with us.
Mm-hmm.
He and I, well, he's I think a little bit younger than I, but and I don't remember the name of the gentleman, but they were friends, and they went up there to visit this gentleman, and he was he's getting a bit older at the time, and he had a East End beef dinner cooked up. And my memory serves me right. I think he lived somewhere near where the East End Town Hall, I think East End has a town hall, had a town hall built, somewhere near where the East End Town Hall was at then. I still taste that beef from back then. That's been about 80 years ago.
But people don't appreciate that trek, if I can say that travel, as you put it, from one district to the next, is a lot like what we would do, in recent times, going to the airport, grabbing the Cayman Airways flight, and traveling overseas. Yeah. It's very much similar in that sense.
It meant the same. I mean, similar, and sometimes a lot of those treks would be by catboat or canoe.
Yeah. Well, I had purpose in my heart that this Christmas I was going to do something similar. I mean, when I was planning, and of course, what I say, the best laid plans of mine. it won't transpire, but God's willing, maybe next year. To do just that, to not just telephone, but to go and, what was the word we used? Visit.
Yeah.
My good friend Nobi, I remember this like it was yesterday, but this was early in the year. He cooked up a wonderful cooked dinner, and we sat in his backyard, and it was a great fellowship. I mean, it's unfortunate that we don't value how important that is.
And there was a lot more, I think, going on within the districts. Mm-hmm. Each district had a lot of Christmas activities that, and people would come from other districts into travel between the districts just to attend these various functions.
And I think that's where I believe we need to be mindful in all we do, because, and I'll be guided by your counsel, but even then, we were respectful and responsible in our interactions. We went to these places, and you put on your Sunday best. In many instances, depending on the visit, but you took a shower, you bathed, and that was itself, going to the well and getting a bath pan. It's not like today where you have a steam shower and you got 50 jets coming out of your luxury bath. I mean, it was an effort.
Oh, well, big effort.
Yeah. And I say that to share people.
And bigger effort if you had a soap that didn't matter good.
Thank you for telling us, because people did that, and cleanliness next to godliness. So that was what we did. We went to visit. You comb your hair, you shaved, you put on your clean clothes and your clean shoes, and just like we would do today. Okay, we get a sanitizer from somebody dispensing that's paid by the hour, but back then, we practiced good hygiene.
Yeah, definitely.
And so I'm hoping that we get that space again where we can fellowship, those garden parties that we heard about yesteryear. Maybe, Miss Luxter, I know you've dug into the vault. I saw you earlier and I thought, man, where do you get that energy from? Is it that cornbread and turtle meat?
That's part of it, yeah.
All right. So you've put something together, some more stuff together.
Well, what it is, it's a little musical piece about 7 minutes long that kind of tells of the music that we listen to and how some of that music related to this time of the year, especially when the seafarers was out to sea and they were all being, they had it in their plans from time they cleared Northwest Point, going to sea to be home for Christmas, but they couldn't always do it because some of them would be on what they call long trips, which would be 90 to 120 days, leaving Baltimore or Mobile or Port Arthur or wherever, and going over to the Far East or over to the European continent. So, and they wouldn't, they just couldn't work it in. But and music was their companion, and I think it brought a lot of solace to those folks who had to be away from home at Christmas time and the folks back home here. So this little 7-minute piece kind of relates a little story, and it also has, I think, a moral fabric to it, in that what we were taught about Christmas. So, I guess, DJ, if you got it queued up there, you can push the button.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back, and thanks for joining us. And thanks too to Mr. Loxtel Banks for not just digging into the walls, but for sharing living memories so that more of us can be not just reminded, but mindful of really what is important. And through music, I think we can cast back. As I listen to the songs, I mean, I asked you earlier if that was Jim Hughes, and you told me no, it was on the stub. And the one from him that I always know, Walking the Floor.
Yeah, well, that came on favorite. Yeah.
I mean, when I think of, that's the song that comes to mind, right? But again, even if you're 18 or 81, you can still relate to music and maybe the stories that you heard as a child, you know, whether that goes back 100 years or 1,000.
Well, I mean, the one that spelling Christmas, I mean, what a beautiful way to teach, a youngster
the meaning, no?
Yeah, the meaning of Christmas. Yeah.
And I say this carefully because sometimes, some of my contemporaries would have discussions about music, and the music today isn't as meaningful, isn't as purposeful, and the messaging sometimes is disrespectful.
Well, yeah, the disrespectful element, but we might say is not as meaningful, but it may not be as meaningful to us in whatever sphere we're in.
Mm-hmm.
But in today's generation, it probably has.
But then, okay, and see, this is where you take counsel, and your wisdom helps me to be even better. But if you just listen to the past song and the moral sort of overtures of the songs, then, and some of the things, though, it tends to incite, not in a way that is positive, right? I mean, that word itself has a negative connotation, right? Yes. But it's certainly not insightful from that perspective. And I wonder how much we as parents, as educators, are paying attention to what is transpiring as the world is changing. How we become perhaps conditioned and complacent.
Well, there's a great discussion going on, a very deep discussion going on up in North America there about what's being taught in the colleges and even the schools. It's transcended into elections, and it doesn't seem to have an ending as of yet.
Is it teaching or indoctrination? We tend to look at it when it comes from the other parts of the world. Oh, that's propaganda, but it's the same thing by another name. If it happens in the UK or the US, we just use a different tack. Get into semantics.
Well, yeah, and if you sort of backtrack that a little bit, you'll find out that it all comes back to control.
Control, yeah. Well, how many of us would be more content at the helm, right, in the captain's cockpit, the plane, or whether we up in the bridge on the ship, as opposed to being a passenger, right? The vessel is taking us to the same place, but we're not in control, so we don't feel that semblance of authority, right? The greatest exercise of power, they say, is restraint. And I think as I look at the world these days, we talk about privilege, and we put all sort of descriptors before, but a privilege and a right isn't one and the same, and freedom is a privilege.
Communications, I mean, you go back to how the Nazis was able to corral in a whole nation into what was an evil approach. It was through the communications of their, I can't recall right away the gentleman who was in charge of Hitler's communication strategy. And the methods that he used to convince the whole German nation, hey, this is a good approach to go. And the same thing is going on today, a lot of today's societies.
It is, and I think and as I listen to, this is why sometimes it makes me, on an individual basis, more apt to delve into history, to question things, hopefully responsibly, hopefully respectfully, but being mindful that there is that, urgency, especially now, but there's also the incumbency to question things. Why is it this way? The young child, with an inquiring mind, the teacher's favorite thing. Sometimes it can be, a bit annoying to the parent. Why? But there's a seeking of knowledge. So for today, when we are asking, why is it this way? Why not this way? What is if it's this way? If it's a business case to be made and you do a what-if analysis, it should be the same for society. Questioning, what if we did it this way versus that way? What if we didn't? To let those freedoms, and those freedoms aren't privilege. I go to a performance, I pay a ticket. It's a license that I enter. That admission gives me 1 viewing or 10, depending on what I bought. But at the end of that, I'm expected and contractually obligated to leave that viewing. That's not the same as a freedom to be able to sit on the beach and look out into the vast beyond. We are somehow confusing freedoms and privileges and forgetting that you give someone authority, control over you. They can take it away. If they grant you that privilege, they can take it away.
No, you mentioned the word indoctrination a while ago, and that's what I think is going on in a lot of societies. And the way they do it is to get into the schools, into the young ones, instead of teaching them to think strategically or think rationally or however you want to call it. They're telling them how to think.
Just read and regurgitate.
Yes.
It's unfortunate, but yet the irony is that we're asking, to develop critical thinkers, and yet that child, she puts her hand up and asks a question. Is the adult, whether it's that parent or teacher, receptive to this question? Are they seeing it that, this is a disruptive child, just being disrespectful? But if you ask, why is it that way? What if it's this way?
Yeah, well, children ask questions and they see a lot of things that sometimes adults don't see. And there was a great television program many years ago, and I think it was on radio first, called Art Linkletter. And the title of the program was Children Say the Darndest Things. And the amount of wisdom that was dispersed from what some of those children said to certain questions, and it was really, it was I think amazing to listen to some of those children.
I never, I guess I was never inclined, for different reasons, and the more I look at it, the more I realize why. But that television education series, Sesame Street, I've read extracts and excerpts from studies that have looked at it and said, through the use of employing, educational psychologists in this content and the new teaching methodologies that were employed, that it was very beneficial and instructing, many people. Maybe that has been now used in a way to conjure up other experimentations on instruction.
Well, I think that's what happened, and it all comes back to control.
Control. Not master control. Not well, can I take a break? Huh? See, control. How many of us do well with authority? All right. Before we go to the break, any quick comments, Mr. Lockter? We just take the break and come back to the call?
Why don't we take the call and then whichever.
Let's take the call.
You put it in DJ hands.
Let's go to the phones. Hey, good afternoon. Welcome. Thanks for calling.
Good afternoon, Dwayne. Good afternoon, Mr. Lockter, and all our listeners. Merry Christmas, everybody.
Good afternoon, sir. And see, control, sometimes when acquired, it's hard to be. Merry Christmas to you, sir.
Merry Christmas, Reverend.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. Just saying hello and wishing you all the very best. We just got some light showers of rain and bright from a cold front that is coming in, so the sea's starting to get rough on the north side of the island. There's going to be some gusty winds and cloudy skies here for this evening and tonight as the cold front approaches. And I just made arrangements for Onassis Tanker to do a Christmas celebration for the Cayman Islands people. We'll be passing late this evening off of Little Cayman, about 10 miles off, and going to give a 5 long blast celebration to celebrate the Christmas and the New Year, as my connections with the maritime activities around the Cayman Islands.
Mm-hmm.
And this tanker is named Olympic Laurel. That was a company that was a Bowman company before, and the family, some of the big relatives and the owners of the company had passed away, and now they have their offspring has got the Onassis company, Bowman, and now they own the world's second biggest tanker. This one is almost 1,100 feet long. Olympic Laurel. We got my good friend Miss Laurel here in the bracket. They got the same name as her, Olympic Laurel, and she's from China going to Mexico. So I was drizzling and thing on and couldn't do any work really. So I was just thought up that I would do that to celebrate our Christmas with having the world's sixth biggest tanker owned by Onassis family coming by this evening off Little Cayman is the area she's going to be passing later this evening.
Well, that's great, Raymond. That's great. How long do you think this little nor'wester might last?
Probably for about 2 to 3 days.
Boy, you got a lot of hopes. You think it'll last that long?
Yes, sir. It's a good possibility.
Okay, well, that's great.
We've been having some of the most magnificent moonlights for the last few days, but unfortunately now that we got the cold front, it's going to be a cloudy skies and it's going to be dark night for Christmas.
Yeah.
Well, will rise probably. A moon will appear up around about 11 o'clock, I think, in the night around Christmas. So it'll be dark night for Christmas, but we've been having some most beautiful. Also, to inform the public that tonight it's supposed to be it will be a meteor shower with you could see up to as many as 10 shooting stars within an hour. But now this cloudy sky is going to impact and put a dent on that for viewing the skies tonight. It's going on all the way till the 26th of this month. You can keep your eyes open in the skies in the night. You'll see the meteors,
Yes, sir.
shooting stars, supposed to be very active around between now and from tonight till the 26th night of this month.
All right. Well, always thank you so much, Mr. Raymond. You've always provided us with some good information. Blessings to you for the Christmas. Hopefully we get a chat with you before then. And thank you very much. And with that, we'll just pause quickly and take that break, and we'll come back. We'll regain and retain control, right, Mr. Luxley? Stay tuned. Hey, good afternoon and welcome back, and thanks for joining us. And if you want to share a thought, if you were listening along and you want to be inspired and share that inspiration equally, well, 949-8037 or toll free with the compliments of Flow at 1-800-534-8255. In the studio, Mr. Lox LeWanks. When I look at time, something that we all have meted out and see in proportion, how we use that time, how efficiently and effectively, how much we get out of it, but how much we're given. And I look to you. You've made time not just to be here, but to go into the vault and pull some things out. And I'm asking, publicly, are we that busy now? Because we are. That we don't have time to be kind, considerate, and loving to one another. Being cognizant that the places we're going to buy things, whether it's the food or the gift or whatever, that those individuals likewise probably feeling stressed, want to be festive but probably can't because of other reasons, and even ourselves. So let's make time for love, huh?
Yeah, well, I think that's the key. You got to make time for it. You just can't. You'll get crowded out. A lot of things will come in and push the really important things aside, and before you know it, you're bombarded with a lot of stuff that, in the end, probably don't mean a heck of a lot. But I think family and friends and your faith, especially during this time, actually all the time, that's the thing that should really matter.
What's the country song? I don't mean a thing without love.
Well, yeah, Christmas is love.
Christmas is love. And the greatest gift of all, huh? And I'm hoping that is, why those of us who are blood donors do that, because we see the love in there. You're not being paid, you're not doing it for anything other than you can. And we make time at Christmas specifically. But increasingly, I think we're finding that we're being stressed. The demands of the international community, the demands that we place on ourselves, the expectations from co-workers and employers, or like from family. We're not sitting back and smelling the salt air as it blew across the head of our house.
No, and I think probably we need to do more of that, But there's a lot of giving, a lot of love being expressed within the community, amongst the churches and amongst the community members. It probably doesn't get highlighted as much as it should.
Right.
And that's something that. Somewhere along the line, someone ought to pick up on it and share these things that's going on in the community, just to let it be known that the community has changed a lot, but it's still, there's still a lot of semblance of what it was like, many years ago.
I wonder sometimes, and I pray that this is not the case, that for some reason, either individually or it has now been, hopefully not deliberately, but not even unconsciously, being represented that to show love and kindness means that there's weakness. To be that given person, people pull back because people take advantage of it. So those values and virtues that were instilled in us, respect, integrity, honesty, strong work ethic, the things that you think make sense. When you become an adult and you're in the business world, you see that isn't where the victories are had. You got to be undermining, you got to be this, that, and the next thing. All the opposite of the love and the kindness. We're seeing the hate and all the other things. I don't even want to subscribe to that, but I wonder if that's what's happening.
Well, I don't think that. Well, I know there's not enough of what you could call, I think, the faith-based practice going on in the community as it was relatively years ago.
Right.
At Christmas time, everything basically was revolving around the church.
The community, the family, and was all one and the same. And I say this carefully, not to dismiss anything, not to downplay, not in any way to disrespect, but I wonder globally, the less and less opportunities that are available for people to gather, to fellowship, even families, right? For understandable reasons in some cases, and an attempt to be civil and compliant and the like. If we are at risk of growing separation, and when you can't put a name or face to something, it becomes a number. So that person no longer represents a human. It's just another check. And maybe that disconnect, we lose touch. Look in the, for some people, where they want to talk, look in the way of my eyes. You can hear my heart. You can see what I'm saying. Now it's hidden behind some anonymous thing. There's no more humanity.
Yeah, and we really don't take the time. I think all of us are guilty of that. But the connection with one another is really, it has great meaning, and it has great advantage to our well-being.
And I look at, even when we could freely go to the Christmas concerts at the schools or at the churches or even the public performances, someone said, we don't have time. We got to get this project finished. The work demands were important, not just for the year-end bonus, not just to make payroll, not just for the promise of promotion, but for different reasons. Or we were tired. Understand, oh man, it's been a long week. I just need an extra 5 minutes. And those things now are almost impossible to come by. Do we miss it? And if so, what are we consciously doing to get back to that space, to make sure that can be done, responsibly, respectfully, safely, and in a way?
Well, maybe that might bring us around to that cultural policy that was developed, what is it, been 5 years ago now?
Has it been already?
I think it's been, it may be more than 5, between 4 and 6, 7 years anyway, that you really don't hear too much about. But I think it had a lot of great elements in it that hopefully that will be explored and brought online and given some thought and some appreciation.
Yeah. I think it's great to have a guiding documentary policy. And I say this again just to ask and thinking, and certainly I'll listen to others who want to share and say, well, you're off base if that's the case, right? Or reassure me if it isn't. We have policies, but to what sense of implementation? We have laws, but where is the enforcement? And I go back to yesteryear, where we didn't have much of that, but there was a common sense approach, a responsibility and a respect for now and for future generations, our approach to the environment. There were not probably anyone who was labeled an environmentalist or a conservationist, but just through our practices, I limit it to the North Sound alone. The fish we took, when we took fish, the quantities that we took, we were responsible. When we went on the trees and we took mangoes, we were mindful not to knock off the blossoms, not to look down the ones that weren't ready yet. Same with the breadfruits. We planted the cassava, we always paid attention to what we were doing. Now, you might say, well, it's, subsistence living, it's, out of necessity. But that's how you survive, right? And that's why you make sure there's future generations that can survive as well.
Yeah, well, I think that the community on a whole has always practiced, I think, what you could call good rationale about what we had and how to, not explore it to the extent that it ever become extinct.
Waste not, want not, right?
Yeah, I mean, I can recall when we could go up to Kung Point, and this is up in the Barkas area, at night, and we could walk out in water up to our knees or between our knees and our ankles, and in half an hour we could gather up 10, 15, 6, 8, 10 lobsters without any problem, But we go out there and we said, well, I got to get one for Aunt Sue, and I got to get one for Captain Mike, and I got to get one for this, and that was it. But I mean, we could have probably picked up 10 dozen if we had stayed there for 45 minutes.
You got what you needed.
Yes. Yeah.
And then you went back another time, and
Yeah, and you know, you get more. You know.
yeah. My father would always talk about save something for tomorrow.
Yes.
And I took that literally. Young boy, but today is Wednesday, so when Thursday comes, that's tomorrow. Let's do that. He didn't mean literally tomorrow. Day after today. But it was also, we go get a dinner at Kunks. Yeah, that wasn't many. You just got what you needed.
What you needed, yeah.
At Barkas, I remember, with him, because you're standing next to him, you feel the safest of all, right? But ham-headed sharks, just in the shallows, right out in the flats.
Mm-hmm.
Not mean, he said, don't bother them, they won't bother you.
Yeah.
Just keep moving along. It's a different time, but I think it's coming down to lack of love and respect. And let's be respectful to DJs, Lynn's voice. Tell us commercial. All right, let's go to the break. Stay tuned. Hey, good afternoon. Welcome back, and thanks for joining us, and thanks to Mr. Loxley Banks for sitting with us. And there is ministry and messaging in music, and as we were sort of reminiscing about our seafarers, coming back, and no matter when they shipped out, it was always that desire to be home for Christmas. There's that Christmas song, "I'll be home for Christmas."
Mm-hmm.
No matter where you are, I think that is a special time of year, and there are probably a few things that, to me, I'm almost, as much as I say I don't like to be adamant nor dogmatic, there are probably two things where I believe is absolutely crucial for me and be difficult to sway. One is this sort of 2-week National Ghost Tour during Christmas because of the tradition, as I understand it, but also what I used to witness in working in a different land at a different time. The worst of enemies made some semblance to get along at Christmas. Most people started to kind of relax and unwind during that time. Offices had skeletal staff, and with today's technology and practices, it would be easier to do that. But yet we're working, 24/7, no matter if it's a Sunday or whether it's a Friday night or, a Wednesday evening.
Well, I think that maybe some folks, like what you were describing there, that just go in for want, don't realize that no matter how we struggle and strive, we ain't going to get out of this world alive.
Yeah.
And, I think the bell is set to ring for all of us. We don't know when it's set, but I think while we exist, the best thing that, from my perspective, is to do all the good you can and enjoy yourself and sing a few songs and enjoy the moonlight. And Scott mentioned it, the moonlight. And the other morning, I came out of my back door. It was, I guess, about 5:30. It wasn't quite daylight. Well, daylight, you could see it was coming, but it wasn't. And there was a beautiful moon down there in the northwest. I mean,
sorry.
And those kind of experiences, it just exuberates you for the day.
Yeah. I enjoy a sunset. I managed for the first time in my life to see the green flash. I thought it was a myth. I've actually seen it a couple of times now, right? And I wonder if it's the setting, the environment, the people, the sort of presence of mind. But I've always been enamored by the moon. Maybe you go back to fishing and you go up on the cap and you sit sometimes and you just look up at the heavens. There's something about the moon coming up or setting. But that particular moon the other day, it was something, I don't know, was it closer? Was it brighter?
Well, yeah, recently it has been closer, but you're talking about the moon. You go and you listen to Dalmeen's song, "Okay Man Moon," and you listen to the words of that song and the music of Mike Arthur Anderson, how he sort of complements just about every word that Dee Dee says with some really melodic chord structure.
Yeah.
It's and I think Dee Dee got the inspiration about that Cayman Moon sitting off probably around what we call Haiti Bay, or maybe the area now that is known as, was Royal Palm. It's now called, what is it called now?
Well, it was called Cayman at one time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Somewhere in that vicinity.
Yeah.
Yellowtailing.
Mm-hmm.
And seeing the moon come up over what was then the 7 Mile Beach vista.
Mm-hmm.
No buildings, just a lot of casuarina trees, and that it might have been a pale yellow moon coming up.
Yeah.
And that's where the inspiration for that song comes.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you've never seen it, I was fortunate enough to see it a few times because I did quite a bit of yellowtailing. Slacked off from the Goldfield White Hole out over the Black. But it was quite an image, you know.
Yeah, but, and you say that, and I wonder if that's not where some of the semblance of calm. I mean, we'll go fishing, right? And thankfully, you shared your experience with me. A few years, you're a junior, and hopefully always respectful. But out fishing, and I'm up on the boat, up on the cap, just sitting on my back, looking up, and watch the moon come up. And it is that thing that makes it real to you. That there's a God, there's a heaven, there is a creator, a higher power, a great architect,
And there's almost the opposite of that. Sitting out there again,
Yep.
tailing off somewhere over the black,
Mhm.
and seeing the sun go down and dark coming on.
Yeah, that's interesting though. I mean, that time after the suns has sort of gone over the horizon. It's now starting to sort of radiate through the sky, and you watch, and depending on the cloud structure and you see it. So that little time there before it becomes dark.
Yeah, and if you're out there tailing over the black and you're looking out at that dark blue water rippling, and then dark comes on, and you look toward the shore, and you can hardly make out Captain Moses' willow tree or Mr. Bragg thatch tree,
But those landmarks, and I guess for many of us now, wouldn't appreciate that you're out, maybe just outside the reef, maybe you're off the Seven Mile Beach, maybe in the North Zone somewhere, and you're looking back. In my day, there were a few lights, a few street lights, few things. In yours, there probably were even,
there were no lights.
Just maybe a lamp light now and then.
Well, usually, no, unless somebody came on the beach, came on a show with a lantern or something. But
Okay.
there was no lights back there.
So no.
No, you would. Captain Moses had a big cassonet tree, wick willow tree, and it towered up over the whole thing, and you could usually make that out as just a shadow, and that's what a lot of people went by. And in Mr. Bragg's house yard, there was a thatch tree they called Bragg's thatch tree. And that was another. Captain Moses was down on the Northwest Point Road, and of course Mr. Bragg was a little further inland. But
And those are the markers that you use to help navigate, back in from fishing, right?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think up around Bashaw is one or two. Your father pointed out, over the years, because of progress, they get mowed down.
Oh yeah.
And they don't serve as the structures. You'd probably be better off, marking your boat by the clouds, than some land structures, because they may be going just as quickly.
True. Yeah.
All right, I think we have another break, Mr. Loxley, and I'm going to see if I can be inspired by something. But stay tuned for Talk Today. Hey, good afternoon. Welcome back, and thanks for joining us. And as I've had to say this publicly, the distinct pleasure, privilege, and honor, Mr. Loxley, for having you sit with us and navigate, guide us, remind us. This is a special time of year, and maybe through music and Cayman music in particular. Now we can talk about, because you were sharing just earlier, Mr. Dalmeen, and maybe for many of us, he has a special place in our hearts for everything, not just his boxing endeavors. We talk about him and my dad being at sea, and they were arranging boxing matches. His years in serving in waters of our parliament, his carpentry skills, but just the jovial humbleness of the gentleman he was.
Yeah, I mean, you look at his music and all his, and I believe that he probably composed and recorded maybe 25, 30 songs. And if you look at them, they all are revolving around the Caymanian, whatever you want to call it, culture or heritage of his perspective. Cayman Moon. You got island, what is it, Pearl of the Caribbean, all about Cayman. Little green shack by the sea, or little green cottage by the sea. And Christmas Bells, which is one of his Christmas songs. He really had quite a number of other ones, which was inspirations from various angles of life. Cayman life.
Yeah, there's a singer, there's a songwriter, the storyteller in there, and I can picture him now. One evening, and I call it the side yard. My mom would say I probably south side. I don't know, east west side might have been. He got his foot up on a bucket and the guitar over, and he's strumming along, right? Now, and I can tell you whether he didn't have a little gin cooked in the water, my brother may have hucks, but that fellowship in that time, that camaraderie, and the way that they would banter, it was way different from now, man. Even the biggest of arguments about who was better, the US or Russia, who would win the war, that always came up.
Yeah. But you go back a little further when they would have all of the marching, at Christmas time. There was a gentleman in he was down from Northwest Point, Heyman, called Heyman, and he was pretty good on the we call it mouth organ, but the harmonica, and you never heard too much from him during the year, but come around Christmas time, Heyman and Dali was serenading, and Dali used to make flutes, I guess, a wind instrument out of a pawpaw stalk.
Wasn't bamboo, it was pawpaw.
Pawpaw.
Okay.
Or sometimes also the castor oil, because the castor oil tree they've got a stalk that's hollow, and there were certain ways that you could cut little holes in that and learn how to finger it. You could come up with the melody, whatever somebody was playing.
But you say that, and I'm sure there are many who would remember that from their youth or their parents telling them. There are probably others listening that have similar sort of things from where they were in their country of birth. But yet we're forgetting these things. We're not recognizing the talent and the abilities and the importance of not just maybe recalling that, but trying to retain it.
I mean, you look at and you brought that up during the break, marbles, the discipline of playing marbles, Yeah. And with the gigs, and the sailing boat, the sailing model boats. I mean, you'd spend I guess a period of 6-7 days, maybe 10 days, 15 days, making that beautiful model boat out of birch tree. And using glass bottle, having to break up you find some glass bottle or somewhere and break it up to get the kind of texture or smoothness that you wanted to get on the bottom of that boat.
But yet we are.
And you had to sit there, you know, it was very, very meticulous.
Mm-hmm. It's carving of it, huh?
Yeah. And you use the glass bottle to really get the really shape that you wanted, because you couldn't, in a small object like that, with a knife. And usually we was using our mother's butcher knife or something, because very few of us had pocket knives or anything like that.
Nowadays you can't have them, huh?
Yeah.
But that's the difference of how we've changed for the worse. We don't value and appreciate not just simplicity, but the significance of what it was. You talk about the gigs. Now, I don't know whether you can, find a piece of land with a right tree, and there's guava tree somewhere, and make a gig, even if you know how to do it.
Yeah, I haven't seen what you'd call an indigenous guava tree in a long time.
Mm-hmm. Neither have I. Right. I was looking the other day for cabbage trees.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I wouldn't mind getting some good buckling stick now and making a kite.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. But you can't find that, and that isn't because we don't value moving forward. We just need to make sure that we don't trespass so much, and what was that we lose it.
But you take the, shall I call it, science of making a kite?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you want that kite to go up there and stay up, but you had to have a balance with the tail of that kite, and it would take you 3 or 4 times launching that kite before you really got that balance down to where you wanted, where she would go up and cap down and come down singing, and really disturbing sometimes in the whole neighborhood with the song, the noise that the kite was making.
The length, the width, and then we used to put the little piece there on the tail will come down, and then what we call it, the little, sometimes you tie on a little piece.
Yeah, well, that was I guess you call it a tail loop.
Tail, okay. I forget all of the terms.
Yes,
huh?
Yeah.
I mean, you can imagine as boys doing this almost instinctively,
and then making what they call the mouth of the kite, which was very, you had to have that just right. And we used mainly, you use the spine from the coconut leaf, which was very
for the buckling stick.
Yeah. You could shape it just the way you want it, and we didn't have any glue. We had to use flour
and water. Huh?
And if you got too much flour on there, it would make the kite too heavy. So you had to.
And you get the right pushing stick to make sure that she sing right.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh man! And then the loops.
Yeah.
It's interesting as I listen to you and I think back to making it. I honestly don't know that I would be able to make a kite. You talk about the science. I mean, there's 3 sticks, right? Mm-hmm. But there's a proportion as to how they're to be cut.
Right. Yeah, and how far apart what we call the mouth of the kite and the tail of the kite is.
Yeah. The science behind that, and then the ratio for that, and then how you string the loops across to make sure you got the tail on.
Yes.
And then you can get her.
And how you put all of those 3 sticks together in the middle. How you tied that all together, because if you didn't get it tied right and that middle stick moved a little bit, it threw everything out of.
Is she coming on?
Yeah. It threw everything out of the dynamics of what the kite.
Like I said, thermodynamics, right? You look at how you notch the end of each stick. As you put your cord around and you lined it up. Yeah. Very much like you would, making line up your building when you were putting your foundation on so that the walls are square.
Even when you're putting the tail on, you had to make sure that you knew how to knot it, that the tail was right in the middle of the tail loop. Because if it got to one side,
she cutting.
Yeah, she cutting and.
And you had to put it down, and she come down by herself. Huh?
Yeah. Well, she usually come down by herself if she's.
And I say this because I remember once publicly and many times privately, some people, including some of the honorable ladies in our community, who didn't like the sound of a singing kite.
No. Well, I recall one of the policemen one time, because Davis Borden and I made a big kite. It was we made it out of the sticks that on the window shades, and I guess that's about 20 inches, maybe 24, 30 inches, and somehow, in fact, we might have just skanked some out of the window shades to the window shades in our parents' house, but we came up with enough to make a big. It was a big kite, and when it was up there, it was really making noise. It was, and
heard all over West Bay, huh?
yeah, we left it up. We left it up a couple of nights, and one night, about 10 o'clock, I think it was either Mr. Vernon Ebanks, he was a policeman in West Bay, came knocking on our parents' door. You tell Lockie he got to pull that kite down because we're getting complaints from and they were legitimate complaints because some of them was older folks and but and if you had that kite really balanced out right, that not just it would stay up there in one position and sing, but if it was doing a little capping, because when it capped down, that only accelerated the singing sound that it made.
Ah, boy, it's. I think of it now, right? Not only you probably wouldn't hear that kite because of all the other noise.
Well, and I heard I think it was on the station where they would caution you about
you can't even fly them anymore.
Fly a kite.
Yeah, you can't fly a kite anymore.
And the thought went through my mind at that instant. Off-reg ought to get an app and have it designed and give it to everybody that's going to be up there in the air, tuned to whatever the frequency of these singing kites would be. And I thought to myself, remembering what they sounded like, probably somewhere between 550 cycles and maybe 1750, 1800 cycles. Make an app that would only, hear that sound and give it to the plane. Say, if you hear that, you got a kite up there.
But I mean, it's probably the helicopter nowadays more than anything else. But no planes are probably the MRCU guy seems to be acrobatic.
They fly quite low. It would be dangerous.
Yeah, but he could probably be a little bit more careful too.
If they got this up,
right there.
There's a kite up there. Let's go around it.
But even to that, there's a sense of sort of looking at development and conservation. We need to be mindful that we are making space for people, but also respecting the habitat of the animals and the trees. But we're not the same for the culture. The practices, we don't seem to have that anymore. That sensibility, that was sensitive, you say.
Oh, yeah.
And I wonder if it's because, again, we're so busy. We become so caught up in not just wanting, maybe it's avarice, that greed that seems to motivate many. Or maybe just that we no longer see the value in the things.
Well, we let other things come in and crowd these out, overtake how much value we put on these things. Something else comes in and we put more value on it, and the one with less value, I guess, just drops off. Okay. But I think this could be where that cultural policy could come in and sort of guide all of these things that's important to our culture and our heritage.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about marbles off air and gigs just now, but Comart is no longer. So I wonder where would buy marbles, hobbies and books. Not there.
No, I haven't seen any around.
I think I can find me a pound of marbles somewhere, but I had a sock one time. But let's see.
Well, that's what we had. Talking about sock, it reminds me when we were playing what we call bat, which was a somewhat modified version of the U.S. baseball game, baseball, how to play baseball, and we didn't have any balls. We didn't have any balls that we could play with, and we would make our own balls out of old rags and
just twine it up.
And there was a special knitting that you would do with probably 12 thread line. Was it a 12 or 15 thread line? I don't think it was any smaller than that, because remember we had three thread, 6 thread, I think 9 thread, 12 thread, 15, 18, 24. Then I think it went up to 36, 48, and 60 thread. That was what. Well, no, 60 thread was the biggest.
Yeah. Wow.
And that's what. And I think there was 82 thread, and these were all cotton lines that what we would troll for to catch the big ones. You know?
And they would cut your hand too if you wasn't careful.
It'd burn a hole in your finger for sure.
You know, and as you were, playing that, I can, the undeveloped land, the grass piece that we call it, behind the houses.
Mm-hmm.
We'd play in the evenings, carve out a little spot, try to find a space where the cows hadn't been recently, and play there.
Yeah.
But you make the most of it.
Yeah.
Now, though, I think, as we were talking, I was thinking back to some of George Carlin's, but for his expletive-laden language, I think he was a great philosopher in that sense, and he spoke to many things that societies were facing and are facing. We got a bigger houses now, but less home. We don't seem to value the importance of play, of preserving.
What's now Willie Farrington Drive?
Mm-hmm.
Right in from the West Bay Road, 100 feet. That used to be a big playground. Was where a lot of spinning gigs, playing marbles, and bat and ball, what we call it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the bat and ball was a version of cricket.
Mm-hmm.
Only thing we didn't have any cricket bats. We made our bats out of a fig tree or
whatever you found.
Whatever we found.
Yeah.
And
wasn't bat everybody use?
Yeah.
I remember when we found some tennis balls, and they would throw them away now, but we beat them to.
Oh yeah.
That was that.
Yeah,
right?
no.
And it was fun, but it was a sense that even in the arguing, because somebody did something that somebody didn't like, even in then there was a sense of you knew what was right, and that one voice that wanted to be, I guess today's language, the bully, wasn't condoned. It was quickly chastised. The neighbors were close by, the adults were attentive and involved, and everybody saw everybody. Maybe the quietness of the neighborhood, you could hear when the noises became, but now it will be lost. We're inside our air-conditioned cars and homes. We have very little outside spaces. Maybe one of the revisions to planning legislation, as I thought, would be that we create perhaps more incentives, either by reduced fees or the like, so that we can build covered spaces in our homes without it counting as square footage. Maybe the green spaces around us can be greater, appreciated, better developed, so we can enjoy it.
Instead of having a hammock under the guinea tree, you'd have it under this. What you just described.
Yeah. But I mean, and I mean, he rests in peace. Burns Conley sitting to my left on a number of occasions has shared. If you were to build a traditional Caymanian house with a wraparound porch, just for argument's sake, and you made that 8 feet deep in order to get sufficient shade from the sun and to make it usable, and your house was say 50 feet wide, just to say as a square, you got a 1,000 square feet of space, without even thinking twice.
Well, and in a lot of the older houses that were built in Cayman, they did not have the ceiling, the walls in the house did not go up to the what you would call the rafter structure.
Mm-hmm.
And they did that to provide better ventilation.
Right.
You keep the window open, and you got it flowing across all across the house and going out.
Well, it's hot air rises, right?
Yeah.
So that the vent through the eaves and the like, or the openings in the rafters.
Yeah.
Little things I think that we are perhaps no longer as mindful as to why the practice is. And if you just stop for a second to think, just to the Cayman context, why we did some things when we did it, from the festivities and the way we celebrated during the Christmas season, to when we went, getting seafood, we were conscious, we were conservative, we were careful.
Well, you think of the wattle kitchen. Huh?
Mm-hmm.
Now, the breeze could flow pretty nice through them,
Mm-hmm.
and that was so that because you had the caboose in the kitchen,
Mm-hmm.
and lots of time that kitchen, if there wasn't an airflow, would get really full up with smoke, and
Mm-hmm.
but with the wattle all around it, the breeze came through and took everything out with it.
Yeah, man. And the position of things and how we did things. When people talk about, you don't want to go back.
Do you know how to wattle?
No, but it's something that I really
I
wish.
wonder if DJ over there, does he know how to wattle? DJ, you know how to wattle?
It's not on the turkey. But you can, right?
Yeah, I think I could do if I could find
Yeah.
the strawberry sticks or whatever. But
I saw my father do it, but I mean, he can knit nets and make fish pots and stuff. So I understand the premise, but to say that I could, I mean, I watched him demonstrate to us once, and I thought, this is how we build houses, and understand the structure was there, the interweaving of the sticks. But strawberry sticks, you can't even find them anyway.
And a very meticulous scientific op was putting that thatch on the roof,
Mm-hmm.
and how you tied that in,
Mhm.
how you overlap each thatch palm with the other one,
Mhm.
and they'd build those thatch roofs. It wouldn't leak. No water came through.
No, man, that's one of the best buyers, and yet it's just made from thatch,
Yeah,
and it lasted.
but you had to cut them on the right moon.
Again, the moon, huh?
Yeah.
Maybe our parliamentarian was rid of something after all. The idea is that we have lost so much.
And
Maybe.
you, and you get back to nature,
Mm-hmm.
and you look at what's happening to the beach side.
Yeah.
Nature. They've disturbed the dynamics of the beach flow,
Mhm.
and that's what we're having to deal with now.
Well, I hope that amongst all of the festivities and celebrations, that we are safe and healthy, but we will stop for a second. If this is home, and if we would even think of it as home on planet Earth, that we would be very conscious, right within the Cayman context, to be respectful and considerate,
CI sensitive.
and consider our impact on each other, on our environment. Mr. Loxley, I'm honored always, for your company. I always leave learning more, but inspired to see that work ethic and that ethos, the integrity, but equally that sense of respect and reverence for the CI sensitivity. Hopefully, we will take that whole this Christmas and celebrate in the Cayman tradition of love, sharing the cassava cake and the cornbread.
And I think to all you musicologists out there, there ought to be a lot more CI Christmas music coming out.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's lots of stuff that you could write about as a Christmas tradition. I know Gordon Solomon, he writes about the Christmas breezes, and of course Andy wrote about the Christmas fiddle and all these kind of stuff. But there's so much more other subjects that could be culled to come up with a melodic Christmas offering.
I wish I had done what I said I was going to do, but I didn't want to ask DJ Lynn to look for Mr. Dalmeen's song, Christmas Bells. But maybe you'll find that, right, DJ, at some point in the vault, and we'll play that. So, Mr. DJ Lynn, thank you very much, sir, for everything. You may seem to be a quiet, unassuming gentleman, but behind that, thank you. he gets such humility. He gets so. Why did you say that publicly? Well, that is our time for this show, Miss Loxley. Well, thank you, sir. And
glad I could sit in and offer a few thoughts.
Yeah, well, you have indeed, and I'm most grateful for you doing so. And to our listeners, it's just Wednesday, and as you order your Christmas beef and you're ready for Christmas Day, remember that as we celebrate in love. There are many of us who are going to be reunited with families for some, for the first time in years. So let's make that embrace a warm and lasting one.
You got to get a little Christmas pork with it too, and turtle.
The turtle, I'll certainly go for the turtle, and some custard top cornbread, a little bit of sea pie. What if my mom would make some? Let me see. But please stay tuned to Radio Cayman and get your music requests in. You don't have to drop them off by hand, but you can if you want. You can WhatsApp it if you wish. Or you can call DJ Lynn. His personal number is 916. You see, that's not funny. Until tomorrow, my friends. Be blessed.